Okay, my name is Mike Yoder, and I've at times been a much more active member of Eden than I am right now, but we're glad to be with you this morning from North Carolina to talk about Hurricane Helene and some of the fire activities that we've had in the state this year. This has been by far the most devastating storm to ever hit North Carolina, probably to hit the east coast of the US. And I'm going to turn this over right now to Dr. Stephanie Ward. Dr. Ward was our boots on the ground during Helene, who traveled the western part of the state to help keep us informed of what was going on and how we might better help. And she's going to present some of the data around this storm. And then I'm going to turn it over to three of our agents and county extension directors who will tell you their stories and what they learned from this event. So, Dr. Ward?
Sure. All right. I'm going to talk to y'all, even though you've heard it already. So these are some of the numbers from the impact of Hurricane Helene, which technically by the time we got here was downgraded to a tropical storm, but it didn't feel that way. And so it was the third deadliest storm in the 21st century with over 5 million people affected in this region of the state. So that's about 46% in total of the North Carolina population. And in a 24-hour period, some regions, some areas in the western part of the state saw between 18 and 33 inches of rain. And some of those same areas had up to 10 inches of rain in the previous 36 hours. And so a lot of land moved in this area, which made this much worse than just a sort of normal flooding situation. We had an estimated $53 billion in damage, which I think that number is now risen to 60 billion.
Let's see what.
Basically, a non-silicon, non-metal circuit.
That's kind of a scary notion to even think about. There's so many individuals that come to us in a state of crisis. They come to us really with very few options, any, in order to get their needs met. It would be absolutely devastating to the overall operation, to the Development Association. So
the one about those. Okay.
Fred, did you mute all?
I did. There's a lot of background noise or
Yeah,
a lot of background.
But I'm not, we're not hearing them, so.
Yeah, we're just getting.
There we go. Okay. Okay, good.
Okay.
Sorry.
Right. No worries. All right. So we had about $60 billion in damages, and in total there were, and these are numbers that came from the North Carolina Governor's Office of the Helene Impact Report. Over 1,100 landslides, 126,000 homes lost, over 1,000 roads and bridges that were out, 145 sewer and water system failures, and over 3 million without power for an extended period of time. So those are some of the impacts. And then these are some images from Yancey County. And you can kind of see where the river left its banks and the damage that was done there as water moved around. And there is a link, which I'm not going to click on here, but we can share it. I don't know that it's still active, but it links to a NOAA website where you can zoom in on areas affected by the storm, and there's a time-lapse video option on that link that you can see the changes pre and post Helene there. And so Dr. Yoder mentioned that our responsibility from an extension standpoint, outside of the people that were here in the region and in their local communities, we managed a lot around donations and distributions of those donations. So our North Carolina Department of Ag was the lead agency on emergency animal response teams. And obviously North Carolina Emergency Management was the lead agency on all of it. And then in terms of extension, because donations started happening so quickly, several of our local offices set up larger scale distribution centers to serve their areas because, and some of this was strategic, no one else could get to them. And so you'll hear from some of them today too about some of their areas and travel in and out of there wasn't possible, particularly in the northwestern section, which are state areas. And so we had 5 donation centers that we settled on. Originally, there were several coming in. These were the ones that between Extension and NCDA, at least, that we managed. There were other private ones that also got established. And then we were responsible for trying to get supplies out to our ag producers, livestock and produce and horticulture, as well as cover crops. And so we initially stood up a portal team. So we had a Google form that we ran a portal from so people could click on that and indicate what they had to donate, where it was coming from. And then we had a team of agents that were outside of the affected zone for the most part that were helping facilitate those donations getting into the distribution centers. And also our folks inside the zone were running donations and distributions as well, because we couldn't keep track of everything that was coming in as it was coming in so quickly. We had a little over 2,800 items, 2,800 entries in that donation form within about probably 7 days of the event. And we were able to start categorizing that as we split it up into feed and hay, and then we split up into fencing and other supplies. And then we had stuff that we knew was on the move already versus stuff that we asked people to hold on to for later down the road. And then we had our extension service runs, we have a set of program teams here, which consists typically of specialists and agents and other program assistants and such throughout the state. And some of those program teams became what we called strike teams and mobilized to deal with specific issues. Like we had a soils team who's still active in the region, but they came up within a couple of weeks of the event and started testing soil and are just now really starting to get some of those results back for individuals, but also looking at that information regionally. We have a very active local foods group, which is part of our Center for Environmental Farming Systems on campus. And they have been active as well in trying to help small farms recover in the recovery effort. And they're primarily helping them with finding grant opportunities to get back to regular production status. And then one of the organizations here in this region of the state is WNC Communities, and that group represents 16 counties. I think that's right.
Sounds
So, and so they have sort of boards within that organization, some that deal with dairy, some with beef, and some other parts of ag. And so they were also instrumental in the response here in terms of running grant programs and collecting money. And so they were really invaluable with when we had financial or cash donations that were coming in from people, and they allowed us to stand up an account with them to be able to make purchases from feed and hay stores and move that stuff around. And so right now, we're actually today in the process of doing a debriefing here in Haywood County. And we have identified a few needs. Again, I sort of work more on the livestock side, but around forages and feed evaluations, a lot of topsoil has moved and disappeared. A lot of rock has replaced a lot of topsoil. Places that were farms are really not going to be that way for a long period of time. And so that's the biggest question mark we've had recently, is how do we help those producers get back to what normal is going to look like for them going forward. And then we've also, we'll be finding out today at least and in the near future, what are the other needs and programmatically that we, can help the agents in the area, start to provide to producers. So I think that's all I have unless
Okay.
there's questions or anything like that.
Okay, thank you, Dr. Ward. I'd like to save questions till the end if we can, just, so we get through everybody. So I'd like to introduce to you, Holly Jordan, who is, in her previous life was a 4-H agent, still does some 4-H programming, but has turned into a super county extension director. And we're thankful to have you with us here. And you have a little more of a different experience being more urban than rural. So if you would please share with us what you.
Yeah, so I'm located in Buncombe County, so that's the city of Asheville, Swannanoa, Black Mountain, Fairview, the unofficial town of Craigtown, which has made the news. That was where a big landslide took out, I think, 11 or 13 members of one family. And so the whole eastern part of Buncombe County was just devastated. And being in the urban county of Western North Carolina, we had so much help that was coming into the city of Asheville once help could get in. And so we found ourselves in a situation trying to get supplies and resources to other counties as well, the smaller counties. I'll go back when the storm first happened. It was, I don't even remember what day. I think it was a Friday or Saturday. Friday, yeah. And so the number one thing that we tried to do is that morning we had cell phone service. And so we were all of my staff was able to connect, most of us. When we left to go home from work that Thursday evening, there were some who were having troubles getting home because even though Helene had not hit yet, we had had so much rain to begin with. So rivers were already starting to cover the roads. And so, there were 2 staff members that we could not reach, but we just, at that point, we sent them text messages and asked them to let us know when they were safe. But we found out that we had several staff members that were cut off. They could not get out of their homes. And so a lot of what we had to do was just assure them that it's okay. We can handle the extension needs. You have to take care of yourself. And so that was big. It's just making sure that our staff was safe. We initially worked at some distribution sites to help deliver food and water, and all of those were set up by the county. So Extension didn't actually have a distribution site in Buncombe County. Like I mentioned, we got supplies to Yancey, Mitchell, Haywood, even a little bit, some of the smaller counties, because all of the attention was on Asheville. And we knew we had some connection at the time when the storm first hit to reach out to the other counties. And so we knew there was a need. But I think it was Friday, at some point Friday, we lost all connectivity. So we had no power, we had no cell service, we had no phone, well, we had no phones, no text or anything. And so that was pretty eerie at that point. But like Dr. Ward talked about, our livestock agent worked on getting hay and livestock feed supplies, fencing to farmers. Later on, we started sourcing cover crop seed. And so we were able to distribute that to our growers. We had several nurseries that we were able to secure the water totes, the big water totes, so that they could actually keep their plants watered, because our entire water system was compromised, like she had talked about. So we did that. We also worked with the soil strike teams and identified a couple of farms that we were able to go out and do testing for. Warren Wilson College, Biltmore Estate was one of those. And surprisingly, most of those came back with very little contaminants in our area. And the only thing we can think of is that there was just so much water, and as quickly as it was flowing, it was just diluting everything. So we had some pathogens, but time heals that. But we've got a couple of farms where there may be some contaminants, arsenic, but we're trying to figure out if those were present before the storm or if they are a result of the storm. Every program area in the office, or FCS, was handling questions about mold, food safety, not having power, how to cook without power. We had our FNEP, our expanded food nutrition education educator. She was out helping at distribution sites. Our admin was out helping distribution sites. So everybody, we were lucky in our office because everybody just saw that there was a need and they went out and helped. And even our 4-H program, we quickly learned that youth were, I mean, obviously they were affected. They were out of school for almost a month in our county, and it was just really disruptive. And especially after those same students went through COVID. And so while we were out in communities having information tables with recovery information, we also did youth events. So because of the timing, we painted pumpkins with the kids and we did a Halloween trunk or treats and things like that. Surprisingly, one of the big needs that we were able to fill with NC State's Extension Forestry Department was chainsaw safety information. And so we were able, I think we taught 176 people total chainsaw safety, which was a huge need because at the distribution sites, everybody was giving away chainsaws. And you had people who had no idea how to use those. So we filled that gap. We've done a lot of FEMA recovery fairs. The master gardeners are assisting a lot right now, identifying invasive plants that are showing up in people's yards. And so they're answering those questions. We also, so many trees fell that people's landscaping, while it may have been a shaded landscape prior to the storm, now they have full sun. And so what will grow there? How do they get their soils ready? I'm sure you guys are going to talk about, you'll expand more on that. But we've had to pivot. And so a lot of what we're doing now, I want to say probably the first of the year for us mentally, that was kind of our moment where we transitioned back to a normal routine, even though the topics aren't normal. But we've gotten back in our routine as of January 1st. That's just, I don't know why that date happened to be, but it's what we went with. So we're dealing with a lot of forest recovery needs and workshops, a lot of stream bank restoration, replanting, shaping, riparian buffers, soil questions. We had a lot of questions this spring, just people getting ready to plant their crops for the summer, and also wildfire. And so we've been able to share some information about considerations to take if you have livestock and what you need to do to prepare during wildfires. We've done several Firewise landscaping workshops for homeowners and communities. And I would say now, I use the word normal programming, but our 4-H program is pretty much back to their normal programming. And FCS, things are getting better, but we're still trying to balance storm recovery with normal programs that everybody still wants. So some things that we learned that in our office we learned was having a physical copy of just emergency contact information, because we couldn't look anything up online. And we also found that we had a couple staff members who were actually located outside of the area because they were coming back from trips or they had gone to visit their family. And that was super helpful for us because we didn't have a way to communicate information to people, and they were our voice. So they were able to get online, they were able to put information. We also found that if you tried to post or send emails that had graphics, they were not going through. We just did not have the bandwidth once things got set up. Okay. To be able to load information. So we also didn't have the ability to print information. So it was helpful to have at our neighboring county extension offices bring copies to us so that we could distribute that information. And I mean, the biggest thing was we didn't really recognize that we as a staff had gone through a traumatic event until we had a statewide extension conference back in January, and we saw the definition of trauma. And it hit us that no wonder we weren't remembering things. We couldn't, the timeline, like even remembering when the storm hit. And so we had to stay in our lane and do what extension does, but we also had to make sure we were taking care of ourselves so that we could take care of others. And so those are kind of the big things that I have to share.
Terrific, thank you. David?
So I'm David Davis, County Extension Director and Ag Agent in Yancey County. We're north of Asheville. If you know where Mount Mitchell's at, the tallest peak east of the Mississippi River, that's us. And those numbers of the rainfall, 32, 33 inches. I think we have 6 of the tallest peaks east of the Mississippi River. And several more on that list, and all those peaks got 30 some inches of rainfall, 28 to 30 inches. So we had a lot of water coming out of the mountains. It all runs downhill, and it was devastating, and it was flooding like we've never seen in our area. And everybody says that saw the greatest floods of the past. And it was just extremely devastating. Initially, we lost over 220 homes in our county, just completely washed away by the storm. I don't know what that updated number is, but I know it's probably in the 500s now with what they condemned and all that. We lost 11 lives, and the storm did not just hit our communities. This is a community I grew up in, so I knew all 11 of those people that passed away in my county. Some of them were my dad's customers. He had a pretty significant business, farm, produce stand, nursery. My wife lost one of her students in the storm, so that was very difficult to manage. And when you think about having to take care of your family and your farm and all that amidst everything else, you kind of get swept up in the recovery, so you don't think about the rest. And the first day of the storm, we had 24 inches of water in our produce stand, which closed our business. It was a very active business. But my dad and I made the decision that we were going to transition our produce stand to an ag recovery site. We've always had a desire to help our farmers, which is one of the reasons I went into extension. And we made it a hay and feed distribution center. We distributed 6,000 rolls of hay, over 6,000 rolls of hay in our community. There probably hasn't been 6,000 rolls of hay ever cut in my county, but we distributed that many. 45 ton of feed. One of the things I learned about my county is there's more chickens than people, and they're all in backyard flocks. I think about 30-something ton of the feed that we distributed was all chicken feed that went to just small homeowners, so it wasn't just farmers in our area. A bigger concern for us is we lost a lot of farm acreage, and if you've ever been to the mountains of Western North Carolina, you don't have big fields. You have creek bottoms and river bottoms. And when you lose 12 acres of 18-acre river bottom, that's huge. As I said, I'm also a farmer. We grow produce. We grew 18 acres of produce last year. We're down to 8 this year, and most of that is because the land got washed away or devastated, and it's not growable this year. We had farmers that lost everything. They lost home, they lost hay, not many of them lost livestock. Fortunately, a few of them did, but not many did. Most of them, the cattle, the goats, all that could get up on the hillsides, and they didn't get washed away, but they lost all their fences. We had acres of timberland destroyed, sometimes 60% losses of tracts that have been owned by families. It was their retirement plans. And we've had people that lost everything. They lost their home that they had, their farm that they had grown up, they had retired. They lost their home, they lost their farm, they lost their land, they lost their equipment, they lost everything. And so we hit the ground with the approach of what do we do? And those first 3 weeks really was just about basic needs. And I got to do things in extension I never thought I would do. I couldn't get to town. Our county was cut off. The river was cut off. So I just went to my local fire department and just got on the ground. I started cooking. We had a makeshift shelter. We fed about 8 people that had come there for shelter the night before the storm. By the second night, we were over 70 people. And I was on the grill because nobody else there knew how to run the grill. And so that's what I did. I flipped sausage and whatever. And something you don't think about, not everything was USDA inspected because in those first 3 days, we couldn't get food deliveries. The power was off. I know this probably wasn't the best approach, but we did what we had to do. We were feeding deer meat. We were feeding beef. We had a generator. And so we had people from the community that came together and they were bringing all their food to that fire station so I could cook it for people. It was, nobody got sick. Nobody died. That was great. That was wonderful. That's what I was afraid of as I was cooking that food, but you just did what you did to survive. We were in this thing about a week and the fire chief told me we're running out of IV bags. We don't have enough IV bags. And they were getting people out of the mountaintop communities and bringing them in on helicopter to the fire station where we had set up a makeshift hospital. And I got on the phone with a colleague through Farm Bureau. And he actually called me and he said, okay, what do you need? And I said, well, I don't know if you can help me, but we don't have any IV bags. And within an hour of that phone call, they had a helicopter on the ground with IV bags there ready to go. And so a lot of that kind of stuff happened that first week. You move on in months ahead, there's a lot of that kind of stuff happening. My staff of 5 people, they were all out in their communities. My agriculture technician was out doing search and rescue with the fire department. My admin, who actually lived in Mitchell County, found her way to our county to cook. She loves to cook. So she took over the grilling duties so I could go out and do more of the ag distribution. My 4-H agent was distributing food to families and putting together food packets and organizing volunteers. Everybody in their office was doing something there in that initial response. And as time moved forward, we have places in our county that didn't get power until Christmas because some of our more remote locations, they had to rebuild all the infrastructure. Every single outlying community was cut off. Our water treatment plant was destroyed. Our sewage treatment plant was destroyed. Even a lot of our electrical mains that went through the county, they were destroyed. So everything, roads, everything, bridges, it all had to be rebuilt in our county. And so we just started there in those first few weeks with recovery. After we got through that initial response, distributing the hay and feed, we began to start thinking about more long-term. And so we started looking at field reclamation. So one of the things we're doing right now is we're just now getting to clean up a lot of the debris. And a lot of that is sand, silt, with all kinds of debris in it. And we're in the process of setting up a location where all that soil can be separated and the soil can actually go back out onto the farms to help those who lost topsoil. We've got a bunch of forestry debris and we're setting up a compost facilities. One to bring in windmowers and actually have actual compost. And we're going to put that back out on farmers' fields and we're working on that. We're restoring hay fields and pastures in the county, and I got a couple grants from Community Foundation of Western North Carolina that allowed me to purchase hay seed. And right now, I think we've got about 800 acres that we're replanting, and we're anticipating a hay shortage this year. So someone gave us the idea, why don't we plant some annuals? Instead of putting back permanent forages, let's plant spring annuals, ryegrass and crabgrass in the summer. And at the university, they had a project where they were sowing clover with a drone. So it gave me an idea. We can plant some of these annuals with a drone too. Only it costs a lot to get a drone operator. So now we purchased a drone and I've become a drone pilot. And so we're getting into that, sowing some seed with drone. That's a big thing that's coming up. But we're planting crabgrass and annual ryegrass to offset the potential hay shortage that we're anticipating in the fall for our producers. And we'll also be working with Miguel Castillo, our forage specialist. They'll be sending us a no-till drill this fall, and we'll be replanting some of those acres. So, it's just the little things. It's one of the things we've learned. It really makes a difference to people when you can just give them a little bit of greenery to look at, and restoring some of the countryside. So, there's so many projects, 10 minutes don't really get it. We're doing things that we never imagined. But the one thing I have seen is our people, I've made friends and relationships all over the United States. I have people now that I can call on that I didn't know before the storm. And I've made friends and a following in my county. And, sometimes it's not about what you do, but it's how much you show you care. And I think that's probably the best thing. If anything good has come out of this storm, is my staff has shown our community that we care. And it's gone a long ways for extension in our county.
Thank you, David. Good stuff. Jerry?
Well, my name is Jerry Beatty. I'm the County Extension Director and Christmas Tree Agent in Avery County. We're north of David, so we're at higher elevation. He has all of our water went to him. My hurricane stuff started on Wednesday, September 25th. We had 19.8 inches of rain that night on the low pressure system before the hurricane got there. And I called my emergency management guy, Paul, about 10:30 saying, hey, do you want me to open my office up as a shelter? And he said, yes. So I went there at 10:30, setting it up as a shelter. He called me back at 4:30 in the morning and said, no, you're the EOC. Cause my building is higher elevation than any other building it is in the county. I have my own power supply, I have my own well, I have my own septic, so I'm self-contained. So the EOC started up there Thursday morning. And when the hurricane finally came and gone, we lost, like y'all, at 10:30 in the morning. I remember that we had 911, we had emergency management, high patrol already up there. At 10:30 in the morning, we had 4 emergency calls, 2 ladies have a heart attack, a 1-year-old in a stream. And another 6-month-old quit breathing. And so when we lost communication, all of a sudden, we had cell service about 30 minutes after that. And one of the things that I'm good at is I remember phone numbers. So I was able to get someone to get the 6-month-old baby out there. And they actually had to use an excavator to go across the mountain to get to the baby. And then they had to walk the baby into the hospital because a landslide happened at the hospital. So it was a pretty wild event. It was very devastating for us. We probably lost 30–40% of all of our timber. I've got 6 growers that represent, my 6 largest growers represents probably about 2,000 acres of Christmas trees and ornamentals. They've lost between $40 and $45 million. I have another gentleman who is probably the 2nd largest landowner in North Carolina, 6,000 acres of timber. He's out of the timber industry right now. He's out of the timber business. He has no way. So when we talk about recovery, I don't like that. I'd rather say restart because there is no recovery from this. We lost physical land in the lower part of the county. I mean, I always joke and say half of Avery County is like this, and the other half is like that, and very few is very flat. If you got 11% land, that's flat land up there. So we had multiple landslides and things like that. But for the first 8–12 days, we had no cell service. No one had power. The trunk line coming in from TVA over in Tennessee was completely destroyed. And so we finally got power 48 hours, 72 hours in a couple locations. The cell towers would only work till 12 noon. After that, half that work. So we didn't get fully restored power wise and internet wise until about 12 days after the hurricane. Because my wife works at Food Line, I became the food and distribution guy for the county because I had the keys to Food Line, could go over there and get stuff. My other parts of my staff, one thing that I didn't have, which I will have before I retire in a couple of years, is emergency management plan. Because being able to call my staff, because once the storm hit on Wednesday at 19.8 inches, we were shut down the rest of the week. So my staff went home Wednesday. I didn't see them again until Monday or Tuesday if I did. And so emergency management plan would have helped us know what to do next, because at that point you're just running on steam. You're just trying to figure out what to do next. So my office became the EOC. I had IMT teams, Red Cross show up Sunday night. We had to find places for them to live and stay, so I was able to get their housing situated. My livestock agent, Michelle, started the food distribution for animals out there. We only have 2 warehouses in Avery County. One's like 60,000 square feet, and one was like 80,000 square feet. One got flooded, one didn't. So the one that didn't get flooded became the animal place. And the one that did get flooded became the secondary location for all the food and supplies we were going to get, which we didn't know we were going to get. And we began trying to figure out who's who. We have 9 fire departments and over 41 churches. All of them became distribution sites. They all, 80% of the county is owned by non-residents. All 80% of our homes are owned by non-residents. So that means there's a lot of outside money coming in, and they gave generously. We had one of the NASCAR owners is good friends with the Green Valley Fire Department. He provided emergency generators for everyone in that district. So it's about 500 emergency generators came up there for them. Air traffic became so bad that Hickory had to shut down all air traffic over Avery. We have 2 airports. One is at Oak River, which is a private airport, and Avery County has a municipal airport down at the bottom of the county. Their controllers consist of some guy on a walkie-talkie standing outside. We were landing planes and helicopters, one every 3 minutes in both locations. So they had to finally shut down airspace because they didn't have a control on who was who, where is where. So my staff, we cooked for over 200 people a day at the EOC because we had all the emergency management teams coming in, all MT teams, the search and rescue teams coming in. So that lasted for the first, 4 weeks. Then they started, once we found, we had 7 deaths. Initially we found 5 of the 7. And the two, there's only 1 body left we have not found, and that person's probably at the bottom of Elk River Falls or in Watauga. We had the National Guard show up, help distribution. I was able to use my contacts with tree growers, with tractors, so they could unload stuff. I was also involved with getting all the porta johns and washing machines out there to each location. So unfortunately, I was not able to be out there with my livestock agent with her, but I knew that she had a family, plus another Linville Central Rescue was out there helping her with the food distribution on the animals. That went on through the month of October. In fact, right now, I'm still the EOC. We still have an active EOC. The county administration office has been condemned. So my county manager, assistant county manager, emergency management people are all at my office, which I'm glad I like them because I see them quite a bit. I put up the fair tent as a secondary distribution site as another warehouse, and it did okay till November when 80-mile-an-hour winds came in and ripped it down. We have a spot at the state emergency management location. We have over 750 pallets of water given to us. We had over 800 pallets of MREs given to us. What I've learned about this is that you can't tell what you're gonna get, and you better have a plan of action before you get started this on what you're gonna do when the truckload of apples show up. And I had 3 truckload of apples show up unannounced. I had 2 truckloads of Irish potatoes show up unannounced, and we were able to distribute all that out to everybody. As far as the water, as far as fire, 30 to 40% of the total forested area have lost timber, timber laying down. In the areas where timber did get knocked down, we're probably running 60 to 70% of the timber on the ground in those locations. To harvest an acre of timber up here is about $6,000 an acre. So no one can go in and do it on their own dime to unload it. We have 800 water points in the county. Only 15% of them at best are working right now. On Beach Mountain, if you have a secondary home on Beach Mountain, I would consider going up there, firewising, landscaping really quick, or selling it. Because the only renewable water source we had out there was a farmer's irrigation pond of 1.5 million gallons, and it got taken out by the storm. So we have 30,000 gallons of water for fire protection on Beach Mountain. Right now, the last fire we had about 3 weeks ago, a beekeeper dropped his smoker. It caused a small fire, and they could only box it in after 160 acres. All of our access roads are blocked. U.S. forest roads are being cleared, but North Carolina forests and private forests are not being cleared. I don't know what's going to happen because the amount of timber that's down, the fuel load that's out there if it starts in the bottom end of the county, it's not going to stop till it gets to Beach Mountain and Banner Elk, the resort areas. So we're struggling with that. Again, all my staff had different things to do, and each person provided help during that time frame. And we did get counseling. I was able to secure counseling for the growers and for my staff. So we have a psychiatrist, a therapist coming by once every couple of weeks to talk to everybody to make sure they're on even keel. And again, I don't have anything else I can add other than this was, I grew up in Florida, been through many hurricanes, driven through hurricanes. I've never seen anything like this, the destruction and the amount of damage and the amount of trees. We've never had tornadoes. In this storm, we had 2 tornadoes spawn off before. First time they've ever had tornadoes in Avery County. So we're still restarting. Many of my guys have gotten help through the NCDA, many of my guys have gotten help through WNC. But when you lose $5 to $6 million, are you gonna go back in debt for another $5 million to get your business started again? So that's where we stand right now in the middle of the restarting.
Well, Holly, David, and Jerry, thank you for your time and input here. I'm gonna just add something here. He probably doesn't want me to, but Jerry, for about 3 days after that storm, was serving food. Didn't know where his son was. That's how dedicated our people have been through this thing. So thank you, all of you. Any questions? We can't see the chat. Fred, is there anything in the chat?
Hey, this is Connie, and there's no questions or anything in the chat. I think we're all still pretty stunned by what happened. I mean, these, the numbers you give and the lives that have been like, I mean, totally devastated. I don't know how some of these people will ever get their businesses back. You know, so anyway, it's just a matter of fact, unbelievable that they were able to do, or that they're still standing at this point. You know, I can't even imagine the mental health issues that are going on in these communities.
Mike, there are a couple questions. Number one, how can we help now? And that's from the group of participants.
Don't send us water.
Or diapers.
Yeah.
Holly, any ideas?
Yeah, I would say, like, right now in the rebuilding, restarting, we have a lot of technical questions that we're trying to get answers up through the university, but even at the university level, it seems like there's not specific information on. And so we have been reaching out to other states' extension areas and just to try to get information, you know, the landslides, that's a big thing, and that's not our area, to try to get technical information about. But bioremediation, we had questions about, you know, everybody has wood chips and mulch, and people are just wanting to fill in their holes in their fields with that. Well, we did get information on that from the university, from NC State, but it seems like, you know, we had a culmination of all the disasters that seem to happen out west: flooding, fires, landslides. And so we've really had to depend on other universities for information and to figure out if it applies here as well with our types of soils and such. So that's kind of where we are at. We have a lot of people just coming to us with questions. They don't necessarily, I mean, everybody needs financial help, but that's not an easy fix. So we're trying to stay in our lane and just make sure that we're giving out and information, research-based information, and that's where we can help. So if everybody's just willing to help answer questions for us, that would be wonderful.
We could use geospecialists that can tell us about landslides, because we have landslides in Avery where they started. It got goosey enough for it to start, but then it stopped. So I've had a building inspector come to me and say, well, do you think this hillside's gonna fail? Because if so, I've got to condemn these 2 homes down here. And I don't know. And I brought in a buddy of mine who did the soil survey, who worked for the US Geological Survey. He's recently retired, and he was telling me that he didn't know. And so, the answer to questions about the landslide, I think is gonna help us out because I probably have, I know at least 12 landslides that have occurred in tree fields and around homes and stuff like that, that are growers asking me, well, what do I do with it? And my best answer is, well, watch it and try to get something on it. But it's bedrock, it's down to the bedrock, so it's not like it's gonna grow anything. So those type of questions, I mean, I think that building homes, if you wanna help, I would say send us gift cards to Home Depot and Lowe's that we can hand out to people who need stuff. Because I can't tell you what John down the street needs, but I know if he needs some building stuff, he can go, if he has a gift card, he can go to a place like that. Versus, please just don't show up here with stuff, because that's gonna be more headache than anything. But I think that going through we have a long range recovery group in Avery County, contacting the long range planning groups in each county saying, how can we help? Because they're dealing with, right now we have probably bridges that are out that probably can't be replaced because their span went from 20 feet to 60 feet.
Yeah.
And right now I've got several families driving through homemade fords in the river. And like last night when we got 6 inches of rain, those fords are gone.
That's what I was gonna mention too, is that storm happened and it passed. And so everybody's really focused on what happened during that storm, but it seems like we've had windstorms. We've had this storm that's just been here this week with all this rain. And so every time a new storm hits, there's a level of anxiety, but there's also, the land has been compromised. And so we were talking about this morning that these storms are impacting us more than they would have before Helene.
Yeah, our streams are wide and shallow, so all of our, like I said, all of our water spots for the fire departments are gone. They're 3 foot above water, and or there's no water there. So I mean, I think the big concern is going to be for us is in another 2 months when we normally go dry in the summertime. If we get a fire started, it'll make Gatlinburg look like a campfire.
Yeah.
That's not what we're about.
Yeah.
Mike, we've got 3 more questions. Number 1, what type of interaction do you have with county emergency managers and state National Guard? Do you cross-train with them or have action plans?
Well, we're going to. My emergency management guy, is Paul Buchanan in Avery County, and I can give you his cell number right now. He's become my best buddy. He's in my office and he's going to be training my staff on the ISC stuff so that we know what we're doing now instead of just flying blind. The National Guard, I will tell you a cute little story about National Guard. One night they were out in a place called Hoagie, which is right next to nowhere. And, which is a really rough section of the county. And they ended up invading Tennessee that night. I had to go get the North Carolina National Guard out of Tennessee without being caught. But no, I think the National Guard was a godsend to us. And I think that we're gonna be working with our emergency management closely. I mean, I'm gonna be having, my staff will be trained in all the ISC stuff. They're gonna be trained and everyone's gonna have a responsibility in the emergency management plan. We're gonna go over it, we're gonna write it ourselves, and we're going to implement it. But yes, they're integral in our restarting.
Fred, go ahead, Helen.
Well, I was just gonna say in Buncombe, because we are urban, we're a little bit different. Our extension falls under an Ag and Land Resources Department with Soil and Water Conservation. And so the director for that reports to the EOC. And so we actually, as extension, we've had conversations, we were in the process of developing an emergency plan, which happened, that was before Helene hit. But we are a little bit buffered from that. I report directly to Jennifer, who's the director of Ag and Land Resources. But in our situation during Helene, we were still doing extension things. We would call her and say, hey, we need, porta potties at whatever place. Like we were doing that, but we were not officially delegated to a part of the county to work for county operations. And in our situation, it actually, I think, was beneficial because soil and water got pulled in to managing water distributions and things like that. And so we, in extension, were actually able to focus on our ag community, which no other entity besides NCDA that we were working with was actually focused on the ag community. So that may not be official, but that's how it works.
Yeah, no, that's good. Go ahead, Dave.
We did have a plan in Yancey. And I mean, it was actually in one of those in motion plans. The one we were operating off of was 10-year-old. But now the biggest thing we had, remember that first night, it's 220 homes lost, and we had shell shock. So, I mean, we could work with our emergency manager, but even my emergency manager the first day was just, we were all oblivious, you know, we didn't really know what to do. And, I think that's what you gotta overcome. You can have all the planning in the world, but we'd never seen nothing like that before.
Yeah.
And
Fred, I'll just add, because that question gets to the heart of our conversation this morning, and that was that response looked different in every county. And part of that is because the county emergency managers, many of them didn't have plans. The ones that did had a much better response than the ones who didn't. And so we know we have to beef up that relationship with those county emergency managers in the future.
Right. The second question actually feeds right back into this. One speaker mentioned needing to take care of staff so they could stay on an even keel to help clientele. What types of strategies were most effective and probably are still most effective?
Well, we had a county therapist initially after the first 24, 48 hours. And like when you started looking, when someone started looking worried or harried or really stressed out, then you got sent to the room. And, so I got sent to the room on Saturday. But after that, we were able to get a therapist to come up, because I was worried about my growers, because, you know, if you've been in business your family's been in business for 45, 50 years, and all of a sudden thought you were doing good, now you just lost $6 million worth of supplies and goods and product. That's a lot of stress. So we got a grant somehow through Western North Carolina to do the therapy. And so that person, we would give names. Hey, you need to go talk to this guy. Hey, you need to go talk to this lady. Or you need to go talk to this girl. You need to go talk to my staff member. And they did that. And that's what helped us stay on an even keel, was we had an outlet to go sit there in a room and cry and scream and kick and yell and whatnot.
And I think Jerry and David would say the same thing, that actually, I think in our office, the storm brought us all closer together. And I think like we are tighter than we've ever been. And I've been in my office for like 15 years. So I think for us, it was just recognizing and just making sure people knew that what had happened and what was needed was far beyond the scope of anything that we individually could do. And so I just remember those first 2 weeks when it was life-saving, like there was a hope that people were still alive. Like you couldn't sleep. You felt guilty about eating. You felt guilty about not picking up the phone. You felt guilt. It just created stressors at home when you had spouses that you have to, go home to, and your phone's ringing until 11 o'clock at night and it starts at 6:30 in the morning. And so I think there wasn't a whole lot of support or clarity that we could bring within those first 2 weeks. But once the odds that somebody was still trapped was going to be found alive was gone, it got better, which is really morbid to say. But I think we all kept each other in check, and we made sure people ate. We made sure people were sleeping. We encouraged people to take a day off, like they had to take care of their family, or they needed to just check away from what we were surrounded by. And yeah, I don't know.
I had several of my folks that I had to pull them off and send them home, because some of them, one of my staff members worked almost 3 weeks straight without a day off, and was probably working 14, 15 hours a day. By the way, he was hourly and he was only reporting 7.5 hours. I had to get on to him about that. He was aggravating me to death, because when he turned in his time sheet, But I actually had to pull him off and make him go away, and go home and go spend the day on the farm.
Mike, you want to wrap it up?
Yeah, I want to thank you for the opportunity to share with you today and we're not the first place to be hit by a disaster. This is just, we have a hurricane about every other year here in North Carolina. So we're kind of used to it on the other end of the state. But for a storm to come in and devastate Western North Carolina the way that it has, just opened up a Pandora's box of new opportunities, new challenges that we're going to have to prepare for in the future. And looking forward to how we might do that and how we might maybe create some multi-state collaboratives that would help us all.
Well, I can tell you, you guys were generous enough to do a webinar in November for us. And, you probably still were shell shocked then, but that is the most viewed webinar that the Eden Extension Foundation folks have put on. And I suspect a number of people will review this too. So we might want to continue this as a series because disasters happen one day, but the recovery and mitigation and life after that will probably take for years. So thank you, Mike.
Yeah,
Connie?
thank you. North Carolina likes to set records, Fred, so we'll just.
Connie?
Yes, this is Connie Burnham. I'm the chair of the Professional Development Committee, and I want to say thank you, Mike, for offering these two webinars because they're really, really impactful and very, very important for us. And then for all of your staff, and I know that it takes a lot of time to put those things together out of all the other work that you're doing, but we do appreciate it. You will receive a copy of this recording, and then it'll have an evaluation with it. And if you'll make sure those who are on, if you will fill that out, we would be forever grateful because, we all live and die by those, that information. So, and it'll help us in the future, try to put together more of these types of webinars or a series of webinars. So again, thank you for your time this afternoon.
Thank you, Connie. Thank you.
Thank you.
Great job.